Billionaire fakes sleep to test Black Maid's daughter. Instantly regrets what he sees. He thought he had seen it all. Money, power, control. His life was built on trust no one, question everyone. But one quiet afternoon, a billionaire sat in his leather chair and did something strange. He pretended to sleep. Why? To test the daughter of his black maid, a child who often wandered into his office. He expected mischief and greed, which may be proof that people only wanted his wealth. But what happened next didn't just shock him. It shattered the cold armor he had built around his heart. This is the story of what he saw, and why he could never forget it. Richard Hayes lived in a world most could only dream of. His mansion stretched across acres of polished lawns, his vaults overflowing with gold, cash, and things he rarely touched. To outsiders, he was untouchable, brilliant, ruthless, a billionaire who trusted numbers more than people. For years, he employed a quiet maid named Mariah. She arrived early, left late, never complained, and worked with precision. Her daughter, Aisha, sometimes accompanied her, a small girl in simple dresses who carried a notebook wherever she went. To Richard, she was invisible, just another shadow in the corners of his palace. But over time, he noticed something unusual. Whenever Aisha lingered in his office, her eyes wandered, not to the gold bars stacked neatly on his desk, nor the crisp bundles of cash in his safe. Instead, she stared at the walls, the paintings, the bookshelves. One day, he even caught her whispering under her breath while glancing at his desk, though he couldn't hear what she said. Richard's wealth had taught him one lesson. People always want something. And though she was just a child, he couldn't silence the suspicion that curiosity might tempt her. So one afternoon, with his vault wide open and riches on display, he leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and pretended to sleep. He wanted to see what Mariah's little girl would do when no one was watching. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of a golden clock. Richard kept his breathing slow, shallow, feigning the rhythm of sleep. Through the smallest slit in his eyelids, he watched. The door creaked, and Aisha stepped in. She was wearing her favorite white dress, her notebook pressed against her chest. Her eyes immediately fell on the desk. Stacks of cash. Gold bars glimmer under the light. Coins scattered like treasures from a storybook. Any child would have run to them, played with them, pocketed something, maybe. But Aisha didn't. She slowly walked closer, her little gloved hands hovering over the desk. For a moment, Richard's heart pounded. Was this it? Would she reach for the money? Instead, she pulled out a pencil from her pocket and opened her notebook. She began to draw. Her tiny fingers sketched quickly, eyes darting from the gold to the paper. Page after page filled with shapes, shadows of stacked bars, outlines of coins, tall piles of bills. But as Richard squinted, he realized she wasn't drawing greed. She was designing. The gold became rooftops. The stacks of cash turned into bridges. The coins became wheels, gears, moving parts. She was building cities, schools, playgrounds, hospitals, worlds made from wealth she didn't own. Richard's chest tightened. He expected theft. He expected proof of selfishness. Instead, this little girl was using his fortune, at least in her imagination, to create a better world. Then came the moment that froze him. Aisha closed her notebook, placed her pencil down, and folded her hands. She whispered, almost like a prayer, "God, if I ever have this much, help me build something that helps people like Mom." Richard's throat went dry. The words cut through the air sharper than any accusation. This wasn't greed. This wasn't temptation. This was hope, from a child who had nothing, yet dreamed of giving everything. Richard's heart thundered. For the first time in years, he felt vulnerable, not because someone threatened to take his money, but because a child had shown him its true value. He wanted to open his eyes, to speak, but he couldn't. The billionaire who dominated boardrooms, who could silence politicians with a single call, was frozen in his chair by the innocence of a maid's daughter. Aisha stood up, glanced once more at the glittering piles, then carefully straightened the chair she had leaned on. She didn't touch a single coin, not even out of curiosity. She hugged her notebook close and whispered again, "One day." And then, quietly, she left the room. Richard remained motionless, his chest aching. He had spent decades believing money revealed the worst in people. He tested employees, business partners, even family, and each time, his suspicions were proven right. But this child had destroyed his cynicism in less than 5 minutes. It wasn't the gold. It wasn't the cash. It was a dream so much bigger than his own. When the door finally clicked shut, Richard opened his eyes. The gold still gleamed. The stacks of cash still sat untouched. But everything felt different. That night, he called Mariah into his office. For the first time, he looked at her not as an employee, but as a mother raising something extraordinary. He didn't tell her what he had seen. Some truths were too delicate to put into words. Instead, he quietly arranged for a scholarship fund in Aisha's name, set aside resources for her education, and ensured she would never have to fight for opportunities the way her mother did. But more than the money, Richard carried something new within himself, a question that wouldn't leave him. If a child with nothing could dream of using wealth to heal the world, what excuse did he, a billionaire with everything, have? For the first time in years, he felt small. And yet, strangely, he also felt free. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons don't come from boardrooms or banks. They come from the quiet prayers of a child who sees wealth not as power, but as possibility. So he asked himself, and left the question for all who might listen. When the world places gold in your hands, will you hoard it, or will you build something that outlives you?